Hey there, Agile Adventurer. Just a quick question. What if, for the price of a fancy coffee or half a pizza, you could unlock over 700 hours of the best Agile content on the planet? That's audio, video, e-courses, books, presentations, all that you can think of. But you can also join live calls with world-class practitioners and hang out in a flame war-free and AI slop-clean Slack with the sharpest minds in the game. Oh, and yes, you get direct access to me, Vasco, your Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. No, this is not a drill. It's the Scrum Master Toolbox membership. And it's your unfair advantage in the Agile world. So if you want to know more, go check out scrummastertoolbox.org/membership. That's scrummastertoolbox.org/membership. And check out all the goodies we have for you. Do it now. But if you're not doing it now, let's listen to the podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this very special bonus episode. And joining us to talk about scaling without burnout is John Whitt. Hey, John, welcome to the show.
Vasco, it's a pleasure to be here.
So most leadership advice picks one lane. Either you focus on growing or you take care of yourself. Well, John, who has been coaching business owners for a while, spent 30 years in corporate construction, managing billion-dollar portfolios before. And I think this is the interesting part of the story, walking away to coach small business owners. His argument is if your systems don't serve your life, your growth is built on sand. His latest book, titled First, Not Last, is now available on your usual outlets, and we'll put the link in the show notes. So we're going to talk about burnout and scaling. Scaling many things, amongst which our impact in the organizations that we work in. So John, you spent 30 years in corporate construction and had a very successful career at that. What made you walk away from that world to start coaching small business owners?
Well, I was considering walking away for a while because at my level, I spent 5, sometimes 6 nights a week sleeping in a hotel bed, traveling around the country. And it really wasn't good for my sanity. It wasn't good for my family. And it really wasn't serving other than just at the very highest levels. And then the company that I was working for decided to move from Southern California to Dallas. And so that was like I'm not going to Dallas move and it's time to start something else. So I had been thinking about it for quite a while, and that was the trigger.
And how did you go about it? I mean, I can imagine it's not just a large personal change. It's also a huge business change to go from working in a corporation to starting your own business and swimming through the murky waters of either you make it or you don't.
Well, yeah. So I had done some technology work as well, and I thought about starting my own technology business. But I really discovered through some behavioral assessment work that coaching was a place where I could be very successful. I like coaching. I've been coaching in one way or another. That's kind of my primary leadership style. I've probably been doing that since the beginning of my corporate career. But I invested in a coaching franchise called Focal Point in 2010. And they gave me all the training and the tools, and they gave me what I needed. I didn't have to invent the wheel. And so that was my launching point. And so I had a lot of tools to get started. I had a lot of friends, a lot of relationships. And the cool thing about coaching is that, we're just helping people.
Isn't that beautiful? We just help people. So you've described yourself as and I'm quoting here, a golfer who thinks like a chess player and looks at business like a project. So that's a very specific self-description. Where does that chess piece come from? And were you ever a competitive golfer?
Well, first I was a competitive chess player. I played in the United States Chess Championships back in 1976. I didn't play in the open division, so don't get any misconceptions there. But I did really well that year. Learned a lot, and the way the chess game is played at the higher levels has influenced my way of thinking essentially for the rest of my life. It's just the way I think of the opening, which is where you're getting started. And so this is startup business, is when you're getting everything going. Takes a lot of hustle, takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of but then the transition happens to the middle game. And the middle game is where you have to think a lot more strategically, and you have to think a lot more, you have to think tactically, but tactically with the right move in the right order, because the wrong order will not get you the results that you're looking for. And then ultimately, what is the end game, right? As you begin to develop assets and resources, how do you transition those to the place that is going to serve your life the way you want it served? And that's been a big component of me is, and you talk about burnout, and the reason burnout happens is we're serving something besides the life that we want, the life that God created us for. And so my programs all start with life is about life. Let's define what you want your life to look like. And then let's take your career, your business, whatever you're doing, and build it so that it serves the life that you want to live. And as long as it's serving the life that you want to live, as long as you can see that light at the end of the tunnel, then you really stave off burnout pretty well. Now, there are times where you can overwork. And there is a time in that middle game process where you have to learn how to take yourself out of the middle of the business, because the initial startup person is the go-to person for anything and everything. And they'll find themselves answering everybody else's problems, take care of everything else they can do, and not doing their work until after hours or on weekends. That gets old pretty fast. So the middle game is where you learn how to manage your people, how to hire leaders, how to hire owner type mindset type stuff instead of helpers or task-oriented helpers, and then building systems and processes so that you can step back from the business and operate on the business instead of always in the business.
Okay, so I want to take that and I want to ask you about your own life and journey as a coach, because we go through the same phases when we have a coaching assignment, right? Like or many of the people listening, whether they are line leaders or line managers, or whether they are lateral leaders, agile coaches, scrum masters who go into teams and businesses and help them scale. We also have that problem that very often we're so busy with the work of being the coach that we forget that we need to consider, as you said, these different phases and what they mean, and also to bring in that thought that life is about life, as you said, and not confuse life with the identity we get from being a coach. So how do you keep yourself grounded in that life is life principle as a coach? Because a coach is a high investment business.
Well, if you think about it, your point is so valid, because there are times when I'm in the coaching spaces where I go, "Oh, John, you need to pay more attention to what you're telling yourself," right? You're telling John here or Tom or whoever you're talking to that he needs to look at his life, and then I'll say, "Oh yeah, we need to do a little re-examining here as well." It's very interesting, but because I go through that experience as I'm working with each individual client, or even a group of clients in a group coaching situation, I can step back and take the time. I'll allocate the time. My mornings are my best thinking time. So my first hour or two of every day is all about, what do I need to do to serve my life and get prepared to do the right things? And that then often is my checklist that I'll go through in the morning and say, you need to figure out how to do this a little bit better, or you need to get somebody else to do this, I think in leadership, if you're a solo person, you're capped. The number of hours you have is 24 hours. And if you have to do everything, that's all you can do. So learning how to accomplish goals through others is really the key. It's the magic, because then you can do really big things. And you have to realize that that's what you're trying to do. And so anytime you find yourself in the middle of trying to do anything itself, right, is that something you should be doing, or is that something that somebody else should be doing?
That's kind of the middle game aspect you were talking about,
yes,
right?
Absolutely. And learning how to, now you can't, the other thing is you can't do everything at one time, right? So if you're in the hustle space and now you want to move, you want to change, you can't just change overnight. It doesn't work that way. So you do have to make a sort of the list, and you do have to prioritize, and you do have to identify what you can change and when and how. And you have to do it in the right order. Otherwise, it kind of gets all jumbled up and messy.
So let me press you on that, John. Yeah, I bet you work with leaders all the time who are kind of very much in that transition from the beginning game to the middle game. How do you help them
Yes.
realize that that transition is happening to them, whether they like it or not, and they actually have to make a decision, or whether they want to stay back in that beginning game, or if they want to grow, scale their own influence and impact, and move to that middle game?
Well, so that happens in the weekly coaching activity because coaching is all about identifying, helping you identify what you need to do next week or between this time we meet and the next time we meet. And so we'll identify two or three or four things that are important to advance your agenda, whatever that happens to be. And we'll get together in a week or 2 weeks or whatever else, and we'll talk about how that went. And the people that say, oh, I didn't have time to get to that, that's the signal, right? That's the signal that says, all right, so let's talk about what's happening here. Here's where you're getting sucked into other things that are preventing you from doing these higher value things. So whenever that happens, we have to give you a signal that says, oh, ding, I need to stop thinking about that way. I need to come up with a different way to do it. And it's not, you can't just run back into that old habit because then you won't get where you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things you just said, which I really love, and we were talking about that in prep, is this idea that it is when we are finally able to achieve goals through working with others that we can truly scale our impact and our influence. How do you help leaders who are, especially, those transitioning from the beginning game to the middle game, who are very often used to this idea that I did it, I got it done, I achieved it? How do you get them to step out of that and realize that actually the next layer, the next step of their evolution is about enabling others and being there for them so that they can scale their impact?
Yeah, so imagine, you know what you could do, you know what you've done, what you've accomplished over time, but imagine that you had 20 of yous that you could leverage. Would you get more done? Would you accomplish more? Would it be more amazing? So that's what we're really talking about. Now you can't get 20 of yous, right? You can't clone you. There's only one of you. But the idea is, how do we get 20 people to make things happen, or 5 people, or 100 people to make things happen? And the reality is, it's never. You want to delegate, that's true, but there has to be some inspiration and some motivation. You have to make your team want to use their discretionary effort to move mountains so that you can accomplish that goal. So it's not just telling people what to do, right? They have to understand why what's in it for them. And that's everybody's favorite radio station, right? WIIFM.
I love that.
So you have to, that's leadership, right? Inspiration. Not only do we have to tell them about it, where we're going to have to give them all the details and the why, but what's in it for them so that they want to take the action. So that, and everybody gives you the 8 hours a day or whatever but if you want the discretionary effort where they're really putting it in for 8 hours or they're working an extra hour, there's got to be something in it for them. You have to inspire them for that.
So talking about inspiration, your book, or one of your books, because you have several, is called Checkmate. And there you lay out a 5-step system for, I think you call it translating ideas into money. The way we would call it in the product world is turning ideas into valuable software, right? Like in value is what we're talking about.
And value, results, money, all of the similar. Yes.
And one of the challenges we have is that most teams are really good at writing software, but really bad at translating ideas into return or value or valuable software. They have a lot of ideas. Maybe they get, lost in execution. Maybe they get into the weeds and start developing God knows how many features that nobody wants or needs. All kinds of patterns that happen. What's the pattern you see in businesses that are stuck between having these good ideas and actually turning them into money?
Well, so I think, first off, a good idea is just that. We don't know if it's going to work in the marketplace or not. And so the key is to get clarity on the results that you want that good idea to generate. I want it to generate revenue. I want it to make their lives better. I want it to, whatever that happens to be. And so that's the first step, is getting clarity on those details. What are the results that you want? The second step is, who do I need to help me generate those results? This is the team. And in the beginning, who could give me more clarity? Who could give me more understanding so that my clarity can be really, really tight? And then ultimately, it comes down to testing. You have to test it in the marketplace. I mean, you are not your market. The market's the market. And so the idea is like, how do we invest a little bit of time, maybe a little bit of money to test that this idea, this plan, this clarity that we have is actually going to generate the results that we want it to generate? I'd much rather invest a little bit of money and a little bit of time to validate that than spend a whole lot of time and a whole lot of money and find out it doesn't work. And so that's a place where people skip that step all the time. They go, wow, this is a great idea. Everybody's going to love it. And they jump in and they launch and and then they find out, oh, it's not really what we thought it was going to do. It's not doing it. And so it goes clarity, team, testing. Once it comes back, validated. And a lot of times there's an iterative process there where, we tested the first thing and that wasn't exactly it. So we did a little bit different. We tested it again. When you get to that final product that you know is going to work and the market has validated, then we put together the launch plan. And then we have to put together the change management plan. So the launch plan is not the last step. The change management plan, the change management process, I won't say change management plan, it's really a process. Because as soon as your plan is done, it starts to degrade because adversity hits it every single day. And so what you have to do is have a process for evaluating what's happening to your plan and adjusting your plan, like the airliner that flies from Los Angeles to New York. It's off course most of the time, but autopilot corrects it and it lands safely. You need the same process for your project so that you get where you want to go safely.
One of these core aspects is that not only do we need to have a good idea, but we also need to get others to move with us, right? Like, and as leaders, especially as lateral leaders, like agile coaches and people with influence within teams, scrum masters. One of your things is about getting this employee engagement as part of that change process that you just talked about. And in agile, we would call it, the buy-in or ownership. So what's your approach to help teams move, right? Let's imagine for a second that we do have clarity on the results we want, and that's not as easy as it sounds. But let's imagine that we have that clarity. How do we get that team to move?
And basically you're saying, how do I get the engagement? How do I get buy-in? Okay. I'm going to go back to what I talked about before. Like, what is in it for them? Why should they want to participate? What's the benefit? What's the value? Do they get a chunk of the pie? Do they get some personal recognition? Do they get some additional learning? Do they get to be able to make a bigger impact? Do they get a bigger salary? Do they get a bonus? What are all the benefits for them? If it's not inspiring for them, it's going to be hard for them to jump on board. It's just a job and it's just a paycheck. But if it's inspiring, then you've got access to their discretionary effort. And that is what moves the mountain.
So you've mentioned twice this discretionary effort, and I think it bears a little bit of investment in time to describe what you mean by that discretionary effort.
Okay, so people get to go to work, right? And you got your 8 hours, and you do. But there's a different pace. Different people operate at different pace, right? There are times when you've got energy and you're excited, and your pace is like killing it, and you're cranking out the work. And there are other times where you're just putting in the hours. That's discretionary effort. There's another time where, oh God, if I just spent 20 more minutes on this, I could make it special, or I could make a delivery date, or I could make something else. You can clock out at 5, or you can spend 20 more minutes and then makes a huge difference. That's discretionary effort. Some people think about the project when they're at home, not necessarily that they're working on it. I'm not saying you have to do emails and everything else at home, but when you're excited about something, your brain is working on it all the time. And you don't realize it, but that's discretionary effort. And if you're not excited, it's not doing that.
That's actually a great way to describe it. I had never heard or used that term before, discretionary effort. But I'm reminded how very often it's the little things, right? Like you said, 20 minutes. It could be 20 minutes, or it could be just, getting up and calling that person instead of sending an email, waiting 2 or 3 days to get a reply, right? Like it could be also this kind of things. And you talked about something there, which is really key in my mind, which is this idea that people feel energized. And when we feel energized by an idea, we very often are working at it, we're chipping at it, even when we don't feel like we are. It doesn't feel like a burden. It feels almost like it kind of feeds itself. It's almost energy that gives us energy, right? And what I get confused very often, and I've seen this happen so many times, is that many leaders seem to be pretty okay with not ever eliciting that kind of commitment, investment, and energy from the people that they lead. What drives people to either be blind or oblivious to the impact of that motivation, that discretionary effort, as you call it?
Well, sometimes I think it might be ignorance, because if they've never performed on a high-performing team, they don't know what it's like, right? Other times it's just, they have their own challenges with their energy and their discretionary effort, and they're only going to give as much as the job requires. But, in this world where you can really make amazing things happen, that excitement is how it happens. So I think leaders can get stuck. The place where I spend most of my work is leaders that recently get promoted because they were in the trenches and now they're leaders, right? So they don't know how to do that very well. But I've had other places where we've had leaders that are super smart, super intelligent, but just don't have the relationship skills that allow them to lead, motivate, inspire their team. And not everybody has it, but it's a learnable skill. It's not something that you have to have. It's not intuitive. I will say some people are more intuitive, but you don't have to have it. It's a learnable skill.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the aspects that you talk about, you have this coaching practice around what you call 4-facet life shine generosity process. And when I read that, I was like, generosity is not a word we usually hear in terms of growing leaders and in the business context. I mean, most coaches will talk about performance and commitment and energy, like we just talked about, and scaling. Why is generosity at the center of your framework?
Well, because generosity always, this unequivocal, always gives you better long-term results. So if you are willing to put in the time and the energy to learn how to communicate your vision and inspire, that's a generous aspect, right? You didn't have to do that. Some leaders don't do that. You just mentioned that. But if you put that energy and time in it, your team is going to perform a heck of a lot better. Generosity has been around since the beginning of time. Many of us do it just sort of because that's what we were taught. We hold the door open. We're nice. We're kind. We help. I'm trying to put a more overt connection to generosity into results. In other words, that if you plan to be generous, if you say, this is who I am, and I will do the work that's necessary to be generous, then you will always get better long-term results. And the 4-facet plan starts with unique identity. Like, who are you? And to be honest with you, when we talk about generosity, 3 phases: time, talent, and treasure, right? Your time and your money and your talent. And as an individual, you have talents in certain areas that you can be generous with. But we do a little study work, right? To where you know what you're going to do and when you're going to do it, so you can leverage it more effectively, so that you can spend your time more effectively. Most people think of generosity as writing the check or handing it out, but that's not it. Time and talent are way more powerful than a check.
Okay, and of course the reverse of the medal of the generosity aspect is that sometimes we might lose track of what we are being generous with, and that may lead to burnout. So how do you help leaders especially, really manage that? Because it's the being generous may lead us, and I see this with agile coaches and scrum masters who very often tie their own identity to the work that they do, that they are so generous at work that they end up burning out when things don't work out as they want to. How do you help leaders find that balance?
Well, and that's in the planning component, right? So when we look at the vision statement and the goals, what does that mean? Where does generosity fit? What am I supposed to be doing? How does that look? How can I make that happen? Because at the end of the day, we only have 24 hours. and you have lots of life outside of work that you have to live. So you don't get all 24 hours for work. So we really say, look, how do I manage the hours that I have, what's available to the greatest efficiency, greatest ability, using generosity. So when we look at that, we'll put together the strategic plan that says, here's the life that I want to have. Here's the vision of my business or my project or my whatever you're trying to accomplish. Here are the goals. Here are the people that I'm going to lead effectively to build and create this. And then we'll identify what are those tasks. And then we need to learn one little trick. And I don't think it's a trick. It's the pause factor. Because people, as the leader, people will bring problems to you, whether they have a personal problem or a business problem. And they won't necessarily be thinking about what's the best time for you to address that particular problem. And so if it's easy and simple and you can address it right away, terrific. But otherwise, you got to learn to say pause. Like, that's a great idea. I understand what you're saying. We need to spend a little more time on that. So let me schedule some time later, because right now, if I spend all that time, it's not going to get my best thinking. It's not going to get my best response. And I'm distracted because I have other things I have to do. So I just pause for a little bit and say, look, I really appreciate what you're saying, and I think it's valuable. And let's get together on that later, today, tomorrow, where we can give it the time and attention that it deserves.
Yeah, and I really feel that aspect of being pressured or rushed, because as leaders, obviously, you don't get to be a leader if you don't want to help organizations, teams, others succeed. And if you're trying to do that and you bring all of that on you, right? Like, we become kind of overwhelmed by all of the demands for attention and solutions. How do you help leaders kind of not only do that pause just as you described, but also realize that, hey, I don't need to solve all the problems, right? Like, there's a team here. I can work with the team. I can put it back to them. Like, how do you help them find that balance?
So if I get you to pause, right, then that thinking is, what's the best way to answer this? Is it me, or is it part of my team, or is it someone else? The other thing, when I talked about the change management process, it's really important that we get great clarity coming towards the leader. Like, here's the problem, here's the challenge, and here's some potential solutions, right? So we want to teach and train our team how to bring those to us. They may need our help, which is perfectly fine. That's why we're there. But we want them to bring it with clarity so that we can analyze it and triage it effectively in as short as time as possible, as opposed to, I don't know what to do here, right? We need to have more clarity in that particular space. And that means, as a leader, that I can serve, I can help you solve that problem, direct you in the right place, guide you effectively in an efficient amount of time.
We're getting close to the end, so everybody check out the book. The book is First Not Last, available in your usual outlets. The link will be in the show notes. But John, if people want to connect with you and know more about the services and the coaching that you do, where should they go?
So my website is really the best place, and it's Business Whitt. Whitt is W-H-I-T-T. That's my last name. The first word is business. BusinessWhitt.com. That's my website. You can find me on LinkedIn at Coach John Whitt. I'm also on Facebook at Business Whitt, and I'm on Instagram at Business Whitt as well. So any one of those, you can reach me. Lots of places where you can request a meeting, set some time to chat, and learn lots. There's all kinds of special tools as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This is just the tip of the iceberg, as it usually goes. There's a lot more behind this. John, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your generosity with your time and your knowledge.
Vasco, it's been a pleasure. I thank you so much for having me on the show.
All right, I hope you liked this episode. But before you hit next episode, here's the deal. This podcast is powered by people like you, the members who wanted more than just inspiration. They wanted real tools and real connection to people who are practicing Agile every day. We're talking access to over 700 hours of Agile Gold, CTO level strategy talks, summit keynotes, live workshops, e-courses, deep dive interviews, books, and if you're into no estimates, we got the pioneers of no estimates in those deep dive interviews as well. Agile business intelligence, creating product visions, coaching your product owner courses, you name it. You'll get invites to monthly live Q&As with Agile pioneers and practitioners, plus a private Slack community, which is free of all of that AI slop you see everywhere and, of course, without the flame wars. It's a community of practitioners that want to learn and thrive together. It's the best place to connect with community and learn together. So if this podcast has helped you before, imagine what you will get from this podcast membership. So head on over to scrummastertoolbox.org/membership and join the community that's shaping the future of Agile. And we have so much for you. So check out all the details at scrummastertoolbox.org/membership, because listening is great, it's important, but doing it together, that's next level. I'll see you in the community Slack. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.